Hey, hope you're having a good Tuesday. Thank you for joining me for today's 5 for 5. All this week, we are talking about how we can share our faith. And yesterday, if you tuned in, you heard Pastor Brooks talking about care through prayer. You heard him talking about how you may come in contact with someone, and the opportunity you've got to begin to share your faith is simply to say, how can I pray for you? Or you hear someone who expresses a need and you say, you know what, I'm going to be praying for you. And if you can take the time to do it right then, stop and pray for them. It's a great open door to lead towards a more spiritual conversation, to be able to really show compassion and care to people, to stop and to show that same compassion that Jesus Christ showed to so many in his lifetime. Today I want to share with you about how we can share our testimony, how we can take care through prayer and lead into what we call a 15-second testimony. You know, telling a testimony simply means telling our story. In Acts chapter 22, Paul was put onto trial, and he was put onto trial because he was sharing the gospel throughout the world. And he came back to Jerusalem, and when he came to Jerusalem, they called him, they arrested him there in the temple, and they questioned him about what he had been doing and what he had been teaching. And so Paul speaks up and gives his testimony as his defense. He tells the story of how he came to Christ. He tells the story of how he had been one of the most zealous of the persecutors. And he was on his way to Damascus when he was stopped by Jesus Christ himself. He was stopped on that road and blinded by the light that he saw that day as he heard the words of Jesus spoken. He goes on to tell about how in the days to follow, he would go on to Damascus and he would meet another follower of Jesus, Ananias. And Ananias would come and he would pray over him and he would prophesy over the life of Paul and the work that God was going to do. Look and see what he says, what Ananias would say to Paul. It says that he was a devout man, according to the law, well spoken of all by the Jews who lived there. Not just the believers, but even the Jews knew that Ananias was a devout man of God. He came to Paul, he told him to receive his sight, and at that hour he began to see, Paul would say. This was his story. This was his picture of what had happened in his life. And Paul says this, that Ananias told him, he said, the God of our fathers appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear a voice from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him to everyone of what you have seen and heard. And now, why do you wait? Rise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on his name. What a great story that Paul had of everything that had happened and the great words that were even spoken over him, as he could say that God had a plan for him and that he was simply doing what God had told him to do. This was his testimony. You know, in our lives, we can talk about a testimony. We can make it real complicated. But with a 15-second testimony, it's really all about understanding what was your life like before Christ, what happened when you came to know Christ, and what has your life been like since. A 15-second testimony is real simple. We just simply say, there was a time in my life when, and you can fill in those blanks. You know, for me, I might say there was a time in my life when I was without hope and I lacked peace. That's a way I could fill in that blanks. I had hopelessness and a lack of peace. But then I met Jesus. And through Jesus Christ, I'm forgiven and I can follow him. Those are my fill in the blanks. You might have something a little different, but mainly it comes down to that point that in Jesus Christ, our life has changed because of the finished work that he has done on the cross. And so I'm forgiven and I can now follow him. And now I can say that I can have two more blanks to fill in, that since then, he has given me peace and he has given me a future and a hope. Those are words that I can put in my blanks. And you could take this simple outline and fill in these 6 blanks to say what your life was like before Christ, what Jesus Christ has done for you, and the way that he has changed you from then. And the last part is you finish with a question, do you have a story like that? That's the basics of a 15-second testimony. To be able to say, this was my life before Christ, this is who Jesus Christ is and what he's done for me, and this is how my life has changed since then. Do you have a story like that? This is a simple tool that you can use to see if people are ready to hear the gospel, to take it further, and to be able to listen more about what your story is and how you have trusted in Jesus Christ. Tomorrow, Pastor Eric's going to share with us a gospel presentation that you can learn, a simple way to be able to share your faith with those you come in contact with. So I want you to tune in with us. We're making it real strategic this week. So if you missed yesterday, go back and listen. And don't miss tomorrow's, because you're going to be able to hear more about how we can go with the gospel and be able to speak the good news into the lives of those around us. I hope you have a great day. Tune in with us all this week in our 5 for 5s as we look at how we can share the gospel with our words and with our lives. Have a great day.